first responder testosterone epidemic. I'm here today with a first responder in the state of Florida. His name is Matt. And today we are going to talk about what appears to be quite an epidemic. And I looked into the data on this, I looked into the details in this, and it's multifactorial, right? So when you look at the first responders that are so important to the nature and protection of our country, law enforcement, paramedics, firemen, nurses, even doctors, of course, anyone that has to work in the streets for us and that cannot just work 9 to 5. And they also have to work amongst some very severe stressors.
I'm Dr. Thomas O'Connor, a lifelong powerlifter, board-certified physician, and published academic author. I've taken care of thousands of men on testosterone and steroids, and now I use my media appearances and this YouTube channel to provide education and harm reduction. Subscribe now so I can help you stay strong and healthy.
So when we see the science and we understand this epidemic, it's clear that there's something going on. But I'd like to talk to a real first responder today for you guys, and this man is unbelievable. He's in his early 40s. His name's Matt. Matt, tell us about yourself, what you feel comfortable with. You had low T and you started on testosterone.
Sure. 41 years old. Been a first responder for about 20 years. For me, it's always been about, really trying to stay in shape. Always trying to keep, stay at the top of my game. And something I noticed early on, which was really for me, like probably a genetic thing from before, or maybe just like pushing so hard in the gym all the time, through like Brazilian jiu-jitsu, weightlifting, trying to stay like in tip-top shape. I always, I never felt really that great. I always felt like there was something like missing. I was always tired. There was always some kind of, just something missing, bottom line. So, and, even starting as a first responder, like in my early 20s, it was noticeable then, and so now we're talking like 20 years ago. And really it came down to, me trying to investigate what was going on, and then running into a lot of hurdles along the way with doctors, and trying to get effective treatment for it. I ran into a lot of roadblocks, honestly, but I spent my, entire adult life as a first responder on on various different shifts. I spent 10 years working midnight shift. So I really subjected my body to a lot of different stressors and a lot of negative things that I think really heightened the, probably the genetic, hormone stuff that was already going on.
So we know from the data that circadian rhythm that you have to deal with, which are shifts, right? If you work 9 to 5, that's a different animal, right? But first responders have to work second and third shift, not to mention they have to jump from the second shift to the first to the third, especially the young guys, right? We also see this in the Defense Department too, the DOD, when guys are in the military fields, obviously they have to be up for days sometimes, right? Special ops guys. And when you look at that, what does that do to your hormone relationship for men? And women are going to be the same too, but we're feeding on top of the other issues that we have in the general population, like stressors, standard stress, metabolic syndrome, and the ancillary issues, right? Like the environmental issues, like the plastic that we ingest in our water and our food chain. So you never did steroids. You're in your 20s. You're a first responder. You have some genes we talked about with the sexually binding globulin, right? So you're going through the stressors of being a first responder with a circadian rhythm. You're eating great, right? You're not overweight, and you always were in good shape, but there's some genetics there, and I think we should touch on that with the labs. Especially, you mentioned to me when we were talking about this before the show today, that you went to doctors and your testosterone was 600, 700, even more, but your free testosterone was low, and that's because so many healthcare providers just look at total testosterone.
Correct.
So tell us about that and what you've learned.
All right, so like even in my 20s, I'm going to the doctor and I'm like, hey, I just want you to like, check my levels on stuff. And they're like, oh, you're in great shape. Like, we don't need to check any of that stuff. And like something that I found right away, like right off the bat, was you got to fight doctors just to get them to order tests on things, right? And if they don't think it's appropriate, it doesn't matter what you ask for. It doesn't matter whether your insurance is going to cover it, whether you'll pay for it out of pocket. If they don't think it's right, like they won't order it. So right away, it took me like years before they would even test my hormone levels. From Matt, you look great. You're in such great shape. There's no way there's anything wrong. There's no way there's anything wrong with your hormones. And like they would just kind of like shame me for asking.
Wow.
And then they would leave. Finally, I had a doctor, in my late 20s. He checked my total testosterone, and it was even higher than you said. It was like, I think 750 or like almost 800. And he's like, oh, you're at the top of the range. You're doing great. Even though the range then was significantly higher than it is now. The range is dropping.
Wow.
But, and so I'm like, all right, I guess, it's the best I'm going to feel. And like I didn't know anything at the time as far as like, free testosterone, any of the hormone stuff. And, a little like, accolade for you, as far as like, as far as I think about it. But, when I really, after that, I was like, you know what, like, I'm not going to sit here and just like sit by while I feel like, I feel like shit. And I'm like having people tell me that you're fine the way that you are. Like, I'm gonna start researching this. I'm a smart guy, like I can figure this out, right? And that led me to like watching a lot of your videos and stuff. You by far, which is why like I wanted to do this, wanted to talk to you. You're one of the most knowledgeable people I've seen as far as like hormones, and then breaking down the hormones behind them and really looking deeper into it from a health perspective, not just from like, how you look or, like what it's gonna do, but like how does it affect you like long term, which was always like my concern. So anyway, back onto that, like that's what led me to your videos and then understanding blood work. And then from that, I went back to multiple doctors after that with blood work that I paid for myself. And I'm like, hey, look at this. I have the free testosterone level of an 85-year-old man. Wow. I work midnight shift. Like, should we do anything about this? And they're like, no, you're too young. And I'm like, I'm too young. Like at this point I was like early 30s, but at the same time, like TRT wasn't as mainstream then as it is now. And I'm like, I'm too young, but like I have an issue there. Like, do you tell people that have cancer that they're too young to get treatment? And pretty much they would tell me to like, pretty much like, I'm not going to treat you. And then the last endocrinologist that I went to, turns out primary care doctors are significantly, more in tune with what's happening. I had an endocrinologist that I went to, had blood work, free testosterone level. The range goes up to like 25 for like, for like LabCorp free testosterone. Mine was like, I think 7, which is like the range starts at 8. So it was below the bottom of the range.
Wow.
And I was like, hey, can you look at this? I've been to multiple doctors. And he was like, Matt, let me stop you right there. He's like, I keep people alive. He's like, I'm not an anti-aging doctor. If you want that, you need to find one of these clinics. And I was like, so you're not gonna help me? He goes, no, I'm gonna look at everything. And so I made a joke and I was like, can I have my $50 back? He goes, no, don't worry about it. My copay. And so anyway, I left there and I was just like, super, like beat down by it, because like I tried for years. And I think that's the problem is, whether you're a first responder or just like a regular, guy that's out there, I tried hard for like 10 years to get treatment, to figure this out on my own. I spent hundreds of hours doing research.
Because you didn't want to just go on testosterone.
No, my thing was this. I won't take a Tylenol if I'm sick. Like if I have a headache, like I won't take a Tylenol, I don't take Dayquil, right. I don't take anything. So the idea of taking something for the rest of my life, I was like, I'm smart, I can figure this out, right? I thought that was like the easy or like the fast way or something, and what it came down to was, for me, genetically, there was something different. Like we talked about with the SHBG, I always run a super high level, so it binds up all my testosterone and none of it is like usable. And I tried anything and everything that's out there, watched your videos, like anything I could find.
Right, natural.
And I tried like taking like boron, which is like a typical, SHBG lower. It didn't do anything. I paid for, thousands and thousands of dollars of blood work on my own. And what it came down to was, like there's a deficiency there, it has to be treated. And literally, as soon as it was treated, after that endo, I found the doctor that I have now who is amazing. Awesome. We'll sit there, like very few times do you find a doctor who will sit down with you, outside of like you also, that'll sit down with you for like, 30 minutes and actually like listen to what you're saying and talk to you and be knowledgeable. Because like I was running into doctors, and this might sound silly, but I was running into doctors that I knew significantly more about hormones than they did. And so they would say stuff to me that I was like, that's completely like outdated.
Be respectful and just keep your mouth shut.
Yeah, and I would try to I would come at it from like a curious perspective, like, oh, I thought that, thought free testosterone mattered more than total, and they're like, no, that's some like new stuff, like no, that's not how we do it.
Yeah.
And so I finally, the biggest thing was this: as soon as I got the treatment, I'm like, here's a glaring issue on this blood work, right? So it wasn't like I'm shopping around trying to find something that maybe I don't need. I'm like, here's an issue. Second that I was treated, like I instantly started to feel better.
So what were your symptoms in addition to you legitimately have low T? And it's interesting that sexually binding globulin, when you look at, just Google like why, so congenital, obesity, thyroid, you checked off all the boxes because we talked about this. And what about stress? Because if you look at circadian, take it from a scientific like etiology, if you just overlay that on you, in the end, well, can you quit your job? Can you just work only one shift?
Yeah.
So that's why we're doing this for the first responders. Not that they're the only guys that matter, but they're very special to me. That they, and all of us, I know, that if you're under any type of situation where you're stressed or just getting older, with this environment that we have, you need to know that it's not just total testosterone and the symptoms. So you go on testosterone, how many years ago?
We're talking, so started this journey of, trying to figure the hormones out when I was like mid-20s. I'm 41 now, and it's been 7 years, so about 35.
Now, people are going to look at you and think this guy does more than testosterone, right? I don't know how the camera's looking on him right now, but he looks pretty jacked. But tell us about that, your lifestyle, that you train like a beast. I mean, you eat on point. Tell us.
So, and I've made a business out of this as like a fitness coach, and really what I do is I teach my lifestyle, which is I dial food in, to a certain way that like I've created that works for me, working around workouts and stuff. I actually have, decreased the workouts down to like the most minimal level. I only lift weights 3 days a week, sometimes 4, just because like I like it. And really I only use cardio when I'm on like a cut or I'm trying to lean back out. So like my goal right now is like, let's say maintenance is like a straight line. Like I teeter around maintenance, right? Like I still, I go out and like eat pizza with my daughter, like I'll have drinks every now and then. It's more so about like the consistency of like how I eat on a day-to-day basis and stuff. And like you were touching on, the environment for first responders is the biggest issue that we have,
Wow.
because guys that don't know how to meal prep, one, they think it's like, and for anybody who's not knowledgeable, meal prepping, obviously it's preparing your meals, bringing them with you and stuff like that. But for guys that aren't knowledgeable, they think it takes a lot of time. So they just go to work and, and you got to understand that like first responders are working additional shifts, like you were saying. So they don't, one, they don't have a lot of time, and a lot of stuff pops up like, on the go, spur of the moment kind of stuff. So they're not planning ahead. And when you don't have food with you and, and you're in the car all day, we're not in offices to where like, you're ordering food in, or like, you have a lot of options. If you work midnight shift, your only options are like diners,
Wow.
and there's nothing healthy in there, and like your body, as like you were talking about the circadian rhythm, your body, you can adjust to being on midnight shift as far as like existing on it, but like your body still runs in the normal patterns and stuff. So like sleep, your body still wants to sleep at night. So like when I was on midnights for 10 years, like I would sleep all night and wake up and still be tired, because like when you're going to work at night, your body wants to go back to sleep. So it's
the sun still comes up. I've learned all this with the adrenal guy, the endocrinology doctors.
So like 5 a.m. hits, you'll be so tired that you're like dozing off, falling asleep in the car, and then as soon as the sun comes up, you don't feel tired anymore because it hits like the circadian, it hits, I forget exactly, you would know better than me as far as what it triggers.
Hypothalamus.
Yeah.
Right.
It wakes you back up, and then you just feel kind of like sick, but not like tired anymore, really. But it's just like a continual like stressor on your body that you get used to, and it just becomes
and testosterone really help that. And what are your levels looking like now?
Like testosterone levels?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
typically.
mean, I keep them at like the lower end of the range and stuff like that. So my SHBG always runs like higher, so I have to keep it, towards the top end of the range just to have like a free testosterone level that's like, a normal amount.
Right, right. That's very tricky. And what do you like? What are the testosterone esters? Remember we talked about that?
Yeah, so for me, the only one, and that's the thing, so like I would like to say that at the end of that journey of trying to get someone to like treat me and understand like what the need was, that it worked out well, but for me, it's been very difficult to like find something that can continually work, Like a lot of guys can just go on, TRT, take Cypionate and feel great. For me, I've always like, even at a completely normal estrogen level, like, we're talking like mid-range or lower, at a completely normal testosterone level, I'll hold a ton of water and I'll like bloat out,
What do you do
excessively.
about that?
So the big thing was, what I did, like I always have done, is like research more and try to figure it out, right? So like everybody knows that right off the bat, water retention is typically like an estrogenic symptom, right? But then I was finding out that like, even when I had the doctor prescribe an anti-estrogen and like my estrogen level was at like, low normal to the point of where my joints were like hurting and stuff like that, I was still holding water. So then it came through like, watching, videos and researching and stuff, finding out that a lot of times you can have, water retention from the actual, androgens themselves. And so then it came through, and I was running like a mid to high, I wouldn't say high, but like mid approaching high, like blood pressure level, So then adding in something like, telmisartan that has a bunch of positive benefits on the side of it too, and optimizing my blood pressure, short circuits the system.
So you're on that now?
Yes.
You like telmisartan?
Absolutely, yeah. For me, I was always running like a blood pressure in like the 130s, like high 130s and stuff. And so, the health benefits of bringing that down to like 120 or lower, it is amazing.
And you feel good on telmisartan?
Feel great, yeah.
So now, we talked about the esters. I think you had some brilliant pieces that you've manipulated with looking at, there's enanthate, cypionate, and propionate. And again, it's like fingerprints, right? But most guys, I think, will do well. And maybe even I fall prey to being a lazy doctor, like just take Cypionate, but can guys find that they could get enanthate, even subcutaneous? And again, for my own guys, and for everyone, does it mean you call up your healthcare provider? And if I'm your healthcare provider, do you hammer Nurse Wendy? We got to shift to this and that. Most guys, the real definition of most, right? That mean median mode, will be able to take Cypionate and microdose it, from every day, which typically is not going to be sustainable, maybe twice a week or 3 times, but microdosing. But some guys, you did, it's not that you convinced me, but I thought some small percent of people, because of their enzymes and chemistry, require further investigation and trial with other esters, and not only that, but MCT oil, grapeseed oil, right? Because the basic stuff that's in the pharmacy that I take, and I think for most of us is okay, is cottonseed oil and linseed oil, and that's standard stuff in like Walgreens and pharma grade stuff. It's cottonseed and linseed. Isn't that fascinating? But I found out just in a couple of years ago, working with great compounders, that you can mix it, even little baby dose of prop with CYP or prop with enanthate. Again, it can get complicated, but you found your mix. And I just ask you guys, if you're working with your healthcare providers, hopefully my testosteronologist that I'm training for you guys, it takes time, right? It takes time, like this guy. And you don't jump all over the place. Don't jump and then 2 weeks later you're back to CYP and you're back to enanthate. Not only is it going to be frustrating for your healthcare provider, you're not giving yourself proper time. Look at your health. Look at your behavior, your eating. Look at this guy. He's on point. He makes it that way. It's not work for him. All right, let's move on to this. The ancillary. Let's talk about the ancillary aspects of being a first responder, either a policeman or a fireman or paramedic or a nurse, anyone working in that field. What can we do? What can we do, man? If they have low T, this is men. Again, my heart goes out to women. It's different for them, but in some respect, it's not. We're not talking perimenopause or postmenopause, but I want to be fair across the board for women too, because they can benefit, and they do benefit from androgens. But what do we do with these young guys, Matt?
Yeah.
That you're going to be on testosterone the rest of your life, dude.
Yep.
Right?
Correct.
So it looks great from the outside. I know you're doing a lot of work in the inside and you're super healthy. You're taking blood pressure medicine. You may not need that if you weren't on testosterone. Even a little bit of testosterone does increase the blood pressure. It just does.
Yeah.
And do you want to be like me, where I'm on like $25,000 worth of biohacking stuff? It's freakish. Like doctors look at me and they go, what do you do? Well, it's what I do, man. That's how I'm 60. I'm still jacked and I'm benching so much. And I love my life.
Yeah.
And I want to keep living forever, right? As long as I can.
Yeah.
No wheelchairs, no bypass surgery. That's my motto, right? So you're doing this and you're going to have to take more and more care. Testosterone's complicated. What are we going to do with these first responders?
So, I mean, for me, I think the biggest thing is like appropriate treatment, you know? So it's not so much like, every first responder needs X, Y, and Z. I think it's more so that, the evaluation of it. And like for people watching this, like if I had watched this video 20 years ago, maybe it would have been like, it would have pushed me further down the road of like, I need to continue trying to figure this out,
Because you needed testosterone. No,
Yeah.
hold on. Now we're looking in hindsight's 2020. Because of this multifactorial nature of why we have first responders having low T and what do we do about it? Its first part is teasing it out for the individual. So for you, because of your genetics, but a young age, and you're not overweight, not drinking, smoking, and eating garbage,
Correct.
right? But because you're a first responder and you're under that stress, mainly the circadian rhythm, you can't quit your job. That's not the government and the people that run the regulators. That's not an option. It's not. And I've been in some of the meetings with some big meetings and some of this. It's not an option. So they scratch their head and they just kind of fade back and they let these guys suffer. So fortunately, you pushed forward and you found that because of the stress, because of your genetics, you had a pretty significant, very significant manifestation of a hormonal imbalance because of the sex hormone binding globulin.
Correct.
It's probably because of the stress. And that would have backed off if you weren't under stress. Quit your job? I want you guys to understand this for yourselves. So, but again, if you tee yourself up, I'm here to help you guys. If you tee it up like he did, it's not like, hey, I had low T once. It was last week. I was on a bad shift or for a month or for a few months and I want T or I should have T. No. A lot of young guys, because you're young, you're not going to have what he had. It's true.
Correct.
So the topic of today is first responders. Is this a testosterone low T epidemic? For some of you guys, it is. I want to be helpful. What's the management? What is it from? What are you doing about it? And what are the consequences? So you're going to be on testosterone the rest of your life.
Correct.
What about fertility?
Already had kids, not having any more.
Okay, but hold on. A lot of guys out there are 42 years old, 40, 50. I think you're kind of crazy if you're over 50, you're looking to have a kid, but that's up to you, sir. But it's like, you got to start playing the games with the clomiphene, which I don't like, HCG, which I do like, to get, and but it's not a deal killer, guys. Hair, you're a very handsome man, by the way. Can we talk
that?
Okay, very handsome man.
So
okay?
I was losing my hair at 21. So it was already on the way out. And I feel like as soon as you start shaving your head, like it's a wrap. You lose it faster.
But hold on. Testosterone takes off the hair.
Correct.
Thank you. You just happen to have a good head.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, let's go head to toe. Bitch tits, and any deal with any bitch tits or gynecomastia?
Nothing.
Has it ever burned on you at all?
Nope.
Okay. Let's keep going down. You're not a steroid guy, so the kidney and the liver and stuff, we have to bypass it. Testicles are atrophied. I don't want to get too weird on you, sir, but how we dealing with this?
You know, I was prescribed HCG in the past, you know, like, and then I always had issues with it. I've always had like significant like estrogenic symptoms from anything that I've taken, you know, HCG, and then trying to take like an anti-estrogen and stuff like that to combat it, like really went the opposite direction. So it's really hasn't worked well for me, but just taking the testosterone directly by itself.
So this is fascinating, right? So now we know more about this guy, and now we're going into like, he loves his life and you feel great. Scale from 0 to 10, what's your quality of life?
12.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
All right. So testicles and sex. Can we get into that a little bit? Because a lot of men, these are for the law enforcement guys in the UK, over in Australia, even the Middle East. I love you guys. And I know you guys are jealous because we have testosterone clinics here, and I'm trying to get testosterone clinics in your country. So we're going to get there. You're not on all the ancillary stuff, and you're just on testosterone, and you're on point because of the diet, exercise, and with the grace of God, you have good genetics from a mental health standpoint.
Correct.
Right?
Yep.
So what would you recommend as we wrap up for, again, this is for first responders, but really any man that's in his 20s, because any guy that's in his 40s, 50s, and he's fat, he's over, he has low T, if you can't clean it up, Get on testosterone. Just, you know what's going to happen head to toe, though, right?
Yeah.
It's just real that so many men and families and wives and regulators that are in first responder positions that are maybe older, my age or older or younger, they're just pushing back on this whole thing, right? But it's wrong to do that. Don't globalize. Look at the man. Look at the understanding of what can he do, and look at him. This is like a twin study. If you could do this, you have the Matt twin who's not treated. Where is he now? Well, that was 20 years ago, and here's the Matt twin that is. Look at him now. But you're on point. So how would we close? Because I want to be conservative. I'm not saying that everyone DOD, everyone in law enforcement and fire, and everyone should be, because they have low normal T, because of the work, Circadian, and all these support, we have all the studies, that they should be on testosterone. I'm not saying that. But how much suffering do you, sir, is it worth it for you? What do you close with?
So I'll tell you this, in addition to the stuff that we talk about, you know, like obviously there's definitely some benefits, like aesthetically, you know, when you optimize hormones and stuff. But the biggest things that I've seen, and, you know, like we spoke about, like I run my whole coaching business off of Instagram, and, you know, like just to touch on it real quick, like the 5 things that I really look at are like, you know, mindset, perspective, and psychology around food, nutrition, workouts, digestion, and hormones, right? So not a medical professional by any means. So like I don't recommend medical treatment to anybody, but what I do is like I push people to do exactly what the question you just asked me, the answer to that, which is seek like blood work that they can run on their own,
right.
And then assess it. And if I can help them go, hey, look, like this looks like it might be an issue, go ask the doctor this, right? And help push them in the direction, because the thing is this, like optimizing those 5 areas is what will change your life, right? People start going to the gym again, will that help? Yeah, it might help like 10%. Change the way you eat, like yeah, that might help some too. But like if you change all 5 of those things at the same time, and you really push for changes in all those areas, like that'll change your life, you know?
Wow.
And so for me, one of the biggest things that I saw with you know, optimizing hormones, and what I mean by that is just bringing them up to like a regular working level that somebody my age
Right, not
should
steroids,
have.
not
Correct.
steroids.
Was that like it drastically changed my mood, you know, like who I was as, you know, like how like emotions, like I was very much lacking in like emotions before, you know, when you're like bottom of the barrel, like hormone levels, like
Wow.
the way you think is different. You know, like if we look at this on like a level we see every day, if you look at like females, when they go through like their time of the month and stuff, right, it changes the way that they act and
Wow.
think. Same thing happens to us. Like when the times where, you know, like the new prescription that the doctor gave me to try something different or whatever, when I was having some of these struggles, like went the wrong direction, like it's drastic like that,
Wow.
you know, from day to day. And then reining it back in the other way, it like, you know, it's a completely different feeling. So anyway, what wrap it up for me is that, like, if you're, you know, somebody who works shift work, if you're a first responder, if you're pretty much anybody, and you think that there's some kind of deficiency there, like you don't feel great, and and you're not aware of an exact reason why that is, seek out some type of blood work, right? And you can go, you know, like there's a bunch of stuff, like I like Life Extension, right? Like that's the website that I always push people to, but you know, you can go to your regular doctor, but like it's cheap to pay for it. There's no reason for people not to know what's going on inside their own body, you know?
Right, labs, we have labs, of course, on the outside of the app, Testosteronology. I think a lot of people don't realize that apart from, I think it's 4 states in America, you don't need a doctor's prescription to look at your own labs. So that's a good thing. But in the end, I'm trying to always give you guys actionable, good information, not bad information that makes people neurotic or worse, right? They act on it and they get hurt because of it. There are some people in this world that are definitely giving misinformation. So, but do your homework, guys. Thank you so much, Matt.
Thanks for having me.
Really nice to see you, man, and just so happy that you're feeling so good, and that I feel great that I'm protected with this first responder around me today. And thank you, all you guys, first responders. Let's get some good comments, guys. Thank you so much.